Here's what I currently have with my current Smartcarb setup. So here is the brass adjuster at the top. It is fine thread. It seems to match what is on most PWK, Nibby carbs, etc. Nothing unusual, fine pitched threads. Here is our spring. And for comparison, I will show you a spring from the Nibby carb, size-wise. You can see a huge difference. This spring will not fit into the pocket on the carb slide that this spring has to fit into. There's no way that will fit. So this spring would have to be used. It is very soft. The other thing I'm trying to show here, see if I can get adequate lighting. It's how that fits down in there. The cable attaches at the bottom of the slide to a notched plate. That forces the cable not to be centered. It is off to the side. So the catch that we were trying to find a solution for, apologies here, God, I'm not a YouTuber. Okay, so stock cable, we were trying to fit this down through the cap. Maybe the threads would start at the top of the cap, and we have some protrusion down into the slide. On the slide here, we would have to put this into the center or down into that cavity there. I think this will fit inside of the spring, but the depth of this pocket isn't deep enough. We would still have to shorten, the threaded section. So as I pointed out, that cable, the way it seats on the slide, God, this sucks. Apologies, not gonna share this publicly. But the depth of that pocket, I can't get the throttle cable end down in there because one, it's not deep enough. And number two, the way the cable attaches, it is not centered at the bottom. It sits off to the side. So the cable thickness, when you put that in there, it's gonna bind. So I don't think we could use inserting and screwing this in so that it fits into the slide by retapping the hole in the cap on the top of the slide. I hope that makes sense. Let me go see if I can take some measurements now and add some more here. Okay, I've removed the choke plunger from the Smartcarb. It has a piece of brass there and an O-ring versus the plastic one on the left. It appears to be roughly the same thread pitch. What is different is the length of the plunger. Side by side with the threads here lined up, overall it's a little bit longer. Don't know how much that matters, but also the plunger on the end here. The one on the left is the Smartcarb, the one on the right is from the old original carb, the Nibby carb. Slightly different length, so they are not identical. There are some differences there. As you can see back up on the carb here, I have taken it out, slide it back in. The other comment I had from Smartcarb was that when you first put fuel into it into a dry float bowl, they indicated you need to open the choke, otherwise you will have problems with the engine filling. Again, this carb doesn't have venting. It has an overflow to drain the float bowl down there at the bottom. But that's it. One of their big things is there's no overflow or venting on these carbs, so I'm not sure exactly how the choke plays into it, other than it's letting some air into somewhere. Anyway, I hope this info is helpful. And I'd love to use a stock throttle cable, but currently what I have set up is working, and I'm not confident that I can get a stock throttle cable to fit into that slide correctly and work without binding. Mainly because that cable does not seat in the center. It's off to the side. If you'd like to buy me a new black cap, I'd be happy to try it. Okay, here's the thickness of the cap on the Smartcarb. And I'm getting 10.42 millimeters roughly. I'm also not holding this very well while I'm holding my phone. So roughly 10 millimeters is the thickness of the cap. Here's the threaded section on the cable, and it's 20.65 millimeters long. Okay, not sure how well this shows up, but again, here's our cable inside the pocket. And you can see it doesn't attach in the center. It is off-centered. If I look at the other side of the slide, you can see that the cable is not centered the way it picks up in the center of that bore. It is off to one side. That's why putting the cable down the center of the pocket is a problem. Now, what I'm going to do is put a caliper into that pocket. And apologies, this is really difficult to do with a cell phone in one hand. I'm getting, this is upside down, apologies, it's almost 12 millimeters. So that is protruding into the pocket where it bottoms out. So I have 12 millimeters there. So essentially we have about 20 millimeters of cable, and we have 22 millimeters of space to work with, which would mean it doesn't bottom out, but because that cable isn't centered at the bottom of the bore, it moves off to one side at the end. Again, I don't know that we have enough space to work with there. The thickness of the nut, looking here, this is what we would use to tighten. So essentially we need some of the threaded end here to cover the thickness of the nut. That means that will take up some of the space for the cable that's in there. Got it. Apologies, this video is just so hard to do here without a helper. The nut thickness is about 4 millimeters. So we get about 6 millimeters at the bottom of the pocket where the cable doesn't have to be bottomed out. Could this work with a stock cable without cutting this off? I'm not sure. I'm not terribly keen on modifying my cap and tapping it out to accept the cable because I don't have another cap. I have something that works right now. I prefer not to try that experiment since the other problem is the diameter of the spring, which, by the way, is roughly, let's see what we got, 7.5 millimeter OD versus from my old Nibby carb, I had 12.23 OD on the spring. So that definitely won't fit in the pocket. Switching topics, this is the choke screw that came out of my old carb. Just showing the internals. I did not use the remote choke on my bike. I do not use it. So it was never a concern with me. I didn't try to set it up. I did at one point, but I never used the choke, so it was dead weight. Anyway, here is what's on the Smartcarb. Brass fitting there. It looks similar, but it is not identical. So let me take it out and compare it.